I am not Doug Hay, obviously. I am Doug Hay. I'm not Matt Frazier. But we are going live today. Matt is in Germany. He is currently at a soccer event with his son. So we have a special guest today. We have someone that if you're a regular viewer of the Plant Based Morning Show or listener of the Plant Based Morning Show, you have already met him. But if not, then you're in for a treat. It is our European correspondent who is coming up here today. We have a lot to talk about. Going into a little bit of a break for Thanksgiving. There he is, Steven. How's it going?
Hey, Doug. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm doing well. How
I
about
can't
you?
hear you. Hold on. Maybe it's me.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go.
Any better now?
Yes, I can hear you. Hey, how's it going?
Excellent. Thank you for having me on. How about you? All good?
All good. All good. I'm excited to be doing this without Matt today. It's nice to get a little break. I'm talking to that guy too much.
Well, as I said, I'm doing the Matt thing of wearing the sports jacket already, so it's important to keep it on brand at least.
Perfect. So, speaking of sports, why don't we kick it off with some World Cup? You're a big soccer fan or a football fan. How does it feel this year to be watching the World Cup?
It's still the World Cup, and I'm a big football fan, so it's still a lot of fun. But I don't want to get too heavy. There's obviously some problems with it this year. For one, it's in the middle of winter now because it's in Qatar, which is just so hot that they had to have it this late in the year, which is right in the middle of the main league season in Spain and in Europe and in most places. So the World Cup is usually a summer festival. Everybody's out. There might be street parties, open air events. This time it's all a bit strange, not to mention the alleged human rights abuses, etc. But yeah, I've been watching a few games. I've just come back from a trip to England for a couple of days, so I haven't caught up on everything yet, but I've been watching today's games, and yeah, like I said, it's still the World Cup. It's still great fun.
Yeah, of course. And there's been some big upsets this year, which is always fun to watch. I guess not if Argentina or the biggest one or the big one today was Germany, right?
Yeah, two of the main favorites, exactly. A lot of the analysts were tipping these guys to go very far. In Argentina's case, it's Lionel Messi's probably his last tournament and probably his last chance to win.
Oh, wow.
And they were expected to do well, and they were beaten by Saudi Arabia. And as much as they feel like the underdogs, there's also some dodgy activity going on in Saudi Arabia. But today, the Japanese beat the Germans 2-1, and well-deserved, too. They played a great game, and they're a real typical underdog fighting spirits. So, yeah, it's been surpassing expectations so far. Let's see how it goes from here. Have you watched anything?
I haven't watched the whole match. I've been watching some highlights and kind of keeping up a little bit, but I have not, unfortunately, watched a match. But we're going into the holidays here, so I'll have some time off and hopefully be able to do some this weekend.
Yeah, and it only really hots up towards the end of it anyway, so you got some time.
Yeah, exactly. Who's your pick? Who's your favorite?
I'm a bit torn. I lived in Germany before, and I really like Uruguay as well for some reason. They've always been a soft spot for me. But I live in the Netherlands, and I feel it's my adopted homeland now, so I've got to cheer on the Dutch.
All right, good. Well, I guess before we move on from the World Cup, I did see, since we're talking about the Germany match, I did see that they did a little photo protest, I guess, by covering their mouth. And that's, I guess it's in response to FIFA not allowing the rainbow flag bans, right? The armbands, and saying that you'd get an automatic yellow card, which I don't know. Is that typical for the like any sort of jersey violation for like everyone to just get a yellow card? That seems wild.
That's quite new. It is typical of FIFA to side with the sponsors and with the organizers and with the money and the power, basically. And sadly, that can be in favor of human rights stuff as well, or against that. But in this case, the yellow card, that's a new one. That's a big deal. That's a further punishment than we've ever seen before. Normally, they deal with things later. There might be a fine, or they might get a one-match suspension. But this is quite drastic, and it's basically seen as pressure from the Qatari government. So yeah, Germany decided to bend the rules a little bit, came out in their best behavior, just looking like normal Germany. And during the team photo, they all muted themselves. I think the foreign minister released a statement afterwards. The Football Association released a statement. So they were ready for this. And it's brave, considering Yeah, considering they still have to be there for at least another few weeks.
Yeah.
Very cool thing to see.
And was there any negative response did you see from FIFA or any of the organizers?
Not yet. The game probably ended about an hour before we came on. I've been on Twitter, and it's generally seemed quite positive. Most people are in favor of it. I'm sure there's going to be some repercussions, but I don't know yet.
Pretty wild to watch right now. Wild times we're living in. All right, let's move on to some plant-based stuff. You just came back from England. What's travel in England like as a vegan?
Oh, it's easy. It's the UK has always been about 5 or 10 years ahead of anywhere else I've lived so far when it comes to the availability of vegan products,
really?
the acceptability, the normalizing of being vegan. Yeah, it's just so good. So I have to say, I was in London. I was flying over to London for a show. I was seeing a live podcast show over there, and brought my girlfriend along with me. And so London is quite, as you guys discussed on your top list, it's a pretty amazing city for vegans as it is. And then we decided to stay an extra day, and we took the train down to Brighton, which is a cute seaside town on the south coast. I love Brighton. It's a typical classic old beach town with the fish and chips and the pier and the arcades and all that. But it's also, for some reason, this really liberal, artsy, cultural, vegan-friendly, kind of gay-friendly city. It's a really unique place. So the UK in general is very good, but if you are going to pick and choose, I would say if you could visit London, do a day trip to Brighton. That's it's amazing.
Okay. Any restaurant in London you want to call out?
I'm going to go to Brighton instead on that one. There's one in London called Unity Diner, which is all the money. It's a non-profit led thing, and all the money goes to good animal causes. So Unity Diner for one in London. In Brighton, I've got the list written down in case I forgot. We arrived in the evening and we had a curry. So a lot of Indian, ethnic people in London, and the curry is just amazing. It's better than anything they have over here. So that was just quite standard and quite great. That's one of those, what you want to call peasant food or ethnic food, etc., that just hits the spot. For breakfast, I had a breakfast burrito, and my girlfriend had a full English breakfast. Do you know what a full English is?
I have no idea what a full English is. No.
It's a fried breakfast essentially. So you might recognize what's on the plate. It's typically a Sunday kind of, maybe seen as a hangover meal or a lazy brunch on a Sunday kind of thing. But it's fried sausages, fried bacon, eggs, typically pudding, like blood sausage pudding, baked beans, tomatoes, mushrooms, maybe. It depends who likes what, but it's a typical hearty, a bit of a treat weekend breakfast in London, in the UK. So to have a full English version of that, considering it's scrambled tofu instead, and it's sausages and bacon, it's rare to find a fully vegan full English. So that was quite a treat as well. And then for lunch, we both had fish and chips, which is the classic thing.
Nice.
But to clarify, it's tofu with nori seaweed paper wrapped in it and then deep fried. So nice. to continue on the theme of the show, none of this is very healthy whatsoever, but really unique. And
that's absolutely. We seem to like to gravitate towards promoting the unhealthy foods by here, but I don't know how that happened, but here we are.
Well, especially when traveling and on road trips. Like I brought plenty of fruit with me. We stopped and got some healthier snacks in supermarkets and stuff. You do your best, but it's when in Rome, right? Like to have fish and chips on the coast in England, to be able to do that as a vegan. The place was called No Catch, another one I really recommend as well. No Catch, right on the coast in a cute seaside town near London. So Brighton, if any UK residents, Europeans, anyone wants to visit the UK, Brighton is pretty much the best place to be vegan. So hearty recommendations.
Right. Let's see. Someone in the Delusional says the full Irish breakfast is better.
Ah, nice.
What's the difference?
That's true. So not a lot, truth be told, but that person's not going to like me for admitting that. Some might say in pubs, especially some pubs in Ireland might open early and you'll get the same dish, but instead of tea or coffee, you'll have a pint of Guinness with it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I've had that once maybe. And there's even if it's brunch, even if it's early afternoon, a pint of Guinness is a heavy thing with a heavy meal. So some people love the full Irish, and not much difference though, really.
Well, that sounds like fun. So I'm running a little turkey trot tomorrow with for Thanksgiving with some family, and we have mimosa scheduled for before the race, which will be fun. So that, it's always I don't drink in the morning very often, but it's always fun every now and then. So speaking of, I'm curious if anyone wants to comment if anybody's doing a turkey trot tomorrow or what their running plans, fitness plans are for the holiday. But anyway, what were you saying?
Turkey trots were never made it over here with Thanksgiving and everything else. So it's not really. I know it's quite a cultural staple over there. So I'd like to hear any experiences. It's quite interesting to me.
I mean, they're usually pretty casual. Lots of times, like it's the one race a year where I usually will push a stroller or something like that, and like bring the whole family along, not care at all about the time or anything like that. And I don't know, they're always a good time. And sometimes, like tomorrow, there will be some mimosas or manmosas, which is the champagne of beers, genuine draft heavy, whatever. It's a MGD.
Oh, okay.
Mixed with orange juice. So it's a little bit of light beer and orange juice instead of champagne.
That phrase "manmosa" just sounds so toxic masculinity to my ears. I don't know what it
totally
is.
It totally is. Yeah. Like, what's wrong?
But I guess it's a stage of growing up, or you're entering a different phase of your life where you're not doing the beer mile anymore, but you're drinking mimosas before a turkey trot.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's a step up in the world.
All right, so we do have some plant-based news here. The first one is coming from the UK, coming from metro.co.uk. I don't know anything about Metro. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that, because it will transition into the next story. But the headline here is "Mom ditches being vegan because plant-based food is ridiculously expensive." And basically, what's happening here is a mom whose husband is not vegan, does eat meat, and daughter is vegetarian but not vegan, so she wants dairy, cheese, and that kind of thing. She gives up because on being vegan, not because she doesn't like it or because she doesn't believe in it, but because it's just too expensive. And of course, my immediate reaction here is a giant eye roll. I don't know about you.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm used to these kind of stories by now, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately so. I mean, basically, what seems to be happening here, and I think this is probably more common than not, especially if you're going vegan now or vegan for the environment, and you don't know a lot about the health benefits of whole foods and that kind of thing. Is there's just so much fake cheese or non-dairy cheese, so much non-dairy meat or anything like that, that people are going vegan and just replacing what they used to eat with all this plant-based versions of it, and that can be really expensive. I mean, of course, Beyond Burgers are pretty expensive. Non-dairy cheese, especially if you're also buying dairy cheese for the rest of your family, to add that additional expense for yourself, that will add up, and that seems to be what's happening here. But as this article rightfully points out, let's see, I'm not gonna be able to find the quote exactly, but rightfully points out, if you're doing it right, or I don't want to say right, but if you're doing it where you're focusing on whole food options, then it can be a lot cheaper to be vegan than eating a meat diet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the thing I found interesting from here was they also featured a point from Faye Lewis or down here of the vegan charity Viva, and so it's nice that they were already getting the other side from a reasonable source, not just some reaching out to any random vegan or whatever they might do. The fact that what did she say? The fact that she can't afford. Oh yeah, she said the main problem with this, the main issue that should be newsworthy here, is the fact that there's a cost of living crisis, and that a mother can't feed her 2 kids living at home, regardless of whether it's plant. The fact that she has to sacrifice ethics and values for making ends meet for a family is a real tragedy here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. As Dale mentioned in the comments here, all food is expensive right now. It doesn't have to be more expensive to eat plant-based. Beans are cheaper than meat. Veggies are cheap. Right. It's just about making the decisions. Jody.
Yeah, great point.
says plant-based junk food is expensive. Whole foods, beans, rice, etc., are definitely less expensive. And I think that's exactly what's happened. Or like, as we said, if you're choosing the junk food or the processed meal, dairy or meat replacements, then they are going to be expensive. And if you're cooking 3 different meals, one for your meat loving husband, one for your vegetarian daughter, and one for yourself that's vegan, and that there's no way around it. That is going to be expensive. It's about
Yeah.
basically cooking. I mean, you could have a vegetarian, you could have a single plate or cook a single meal that that serves all 3 of those categories, and maybe the husband gets a little bit of meat on the side, but it's a vegetable heavy stir fry or something like that goes along with it, and that can be a lot cheaper than what the example she uses is she was making a vegan lasagna for herself with vegan cheese, and a regular lasagna for her husband with with real cheese and meat.
Yeah,
like of course,
like we all do every day.
Exactly. Yeah. So
The thing another bit I took from that was I was trying to be a bit decent and say it's a cost of living crisis is part of the problem, and it is. But it references here she now is no longer vegan, but she'll eat eggs and cheese. But if it's a cost of living issue, eggs and cheese are not cheap. If you have to bulk buy a meat or whatever to feed the family, but eggs and cheese were like the luxury. If you can't stop being vegan because you love cheese so much, fine, that's your thing. But it's not to save money. That's not much more. That's not much cheaper than the vegan version.
Yeah. You're exactly right. So what do you know about Metro? Because a lot of the UK articles we get here that Matt finds are from sources that tend to be definitely on the conservative end. But the Metro logo here is a rainbow flag. So
and the up to date one with the transgender colors and everything else. So that's nice to see. Metro first came along. I don't know if you ever had them in the US or if anybody has them in their area as a free newspaper. So you would have these people standing out on the street at train stations at busy commuter times, just handing out the newspaper, and it's paid for. It's free, but paid for by advertising. And it was never, deep analysis of a political situation or whatever, but it covered all the news stories. It had a crossword or a Sudoku puzzle, and I think they started to phase them out over a while. They were here in the Netherlands for a few years, not anymore, but they've turned to online news media seemingly as the main resource. And it's not hard-hitting investigative journalism or anything. It's quite populist, and I don't know who funds it, to be honest, but it does tend to lean towards these kind of stories that just get clickbait, that will get hits.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, that seems to be kind of where news is going in general for the most part, at least mainstream sources, which transition us perfectly into this plant-based news article, which I really loved that they published this. This was from today. And the headline is, in 2022, it's not sex that sells, it's vegan hate. And what they're doing is looking at the resurgence of an article that we covered a couple weeks ago on here on the Plant-Based Morning Show, which was about a Reddit user who posted about the headline of the post was, "Am I an asshole?" And it was basically this mother who was feeding her daughter's friend non-vegan food, even though the daughter's friend and the daughter's friend's family were strict vegans. And it was all about, it's kind of like saying that the kid was malnourished and weak, and she left so much more vibrant after we fed her all these non-vegan foods. And it was
crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely crazy stuff. And what I didn't know until reading this article, was that post was a year old, and it would made a whole bunch of headlines a year ago, and then just recently kind of had this resurgence. And if you haven't read, I would encourage everybody to go to plantbasednews.org and read this article, because I thought it was really kind of compelling. But really, it's talking about how mainstream or many news outlets that are focused on clicks, that are focused on getting people to share stuff and like it on Facebook and comment on Facebook and engage in that, are just are love articles that hate on vegans, because they stir up a lot of energy on both sides. And and I don't know. I thought it seems to be we're seeing a lot of that. Of course, we're covering articles here about airlines that are just serving vegan meals with that's just water and that kind of thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're I don't know. I wouldn't say we're part of the problem, but maybe we're taking the bait for sure, because that seems to be what people are.
I mean, maybe. I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself there, but there certainly is a trend for these these stories get clicks. Right, you're cutting out on me a bit there. Is that everything okay
sorry.
on your end?
Yeah, and
Okay,
everything's
yeah.
good on my end.
Yeah, like you said, I do encourage everyone to read this article. It's quite an interesting. It covers the whole original story that you talked about. In conclusion, the writer says they just don't believe it. There was too many random details that they think it's probably not true in the first place. But yeah, like you said, I had no idea that it was shared. 7 or 8 different media sources shared it over the course of a year, as if it was news, as if it was new news, which is, yeah, clearly they know what works, and it's kind of a shame.
Yeah, and it also kind of talks about, or it also kind of amplifies the fact that these news organizations are just kind of stealing from each other, right? I mean, somebody
Yeah.
says something, maybe it blows up on Facebook, and then all the other news organizations are just going to jump on it, right? I'm sure there was there's no other reason why it would get reshared a year later by all these outlets, except that they just kind of saw that it was trending on another one and jumped right on it.
Yeah, it's not exactly the gripping media we're all taught to believe and trust in. But another thing, on the flip side of that, it goes on to talk about the mainstream media versus vegans, and it lists a few examples of people on TV who were, against veganism and not getting any trouble for it. But did you know any of these names? Any of the people that were involved that they mentioned?
Well, Piers Morgan, of course.
Piers Morgan. Okay, I'm not sure who's big in the US or who's not, but Suella Braverman was first. She's a UK politician. Piers Morgan, the talk show host, and Jeremy Clarkson, who is got famous for a TV car show on TV. But Suella Braverman is a Conservative Party politician who was fired just before the last Prime Minister resigned, or she resigned and was in a scandal about security leaking details, and was rehired. Piers Morgan was removed from his main host on a main British broadcasting show and now has an independent talk show. And Jeremy Clarkson was fired by the BBC. None of this is alleged. This is all true. Jeremy Clarkson was fired by the BBC for assaulting a cameraman, an Irish cameraman who he was racially abusing and physically assaulting. So they are big names, but they're famously conservative names. I'm sure you could think of a few American equivalents on Fox News or Alex Jones, that kind of thing. It's not a surprise that any of these people are attacking vegans, and the Metro or the main article would suggest, or all of those types of articles would suggest, that this is the silent majority, barking back, but in reality, it's just kind of the old-fashioned people who were never on board in the first place, and that kind of mentality seems to be dying out, at least certainly in the UK. So. It's not all hope is lost.
Well, I hope so. Piers Morgan had a show on CNN for a number of years, and he was kind of the conservative pundit on CNN for a while. But I don't know if he got fired or if he left. I'm not sure, but he's definitely well known here as well.
He had a breakfast show in the UK, and I think it was a mutual consent sort of thing. I don't think he got fired in the same way as the other one did. But it's definitely some issues, and now he's gone to his new talk show is called something uncensored on Freeview Channel Talk TV. So he's this rich white man is finally uncensored, and he can speak his mind. Yeah,
good for him. All right, so this wasn't on our list here, but have you seen? It kind of plays well into this, and maybe this is a good way for us to wrap up. Have you seen the anti-vegan self-proclaimed sausage expert thing?
Yeah, it came across my feed somewhere. I haven't watched the video. I haven't read it about it, but I heard it happened. Yeah. Have you seen it?
This might be I have. I think this might be a UK thing as well. I can't remember where it's from, but all right. So basically, it's a news, the Jeremy Vine. I don't know what that is, but a vegan, like a news talk show. They bring on this sausage expert to try a vegan sausage and a meat sausage and see what he can, if he can tell the difference. And what they actually do is give him 2 vegan sausages, and he eats one of them, and he's like, "Oh, this one's cardboard. This is definitely the vegan one." And then he eats the other one. He's like, "Oh, this one, I can taste the rich, delicious meatness in this one. It's giving me, I don't know, it's luxurious and lovely, or luscious and lovely." And then they reveal that
were those his words, luscious and
those were his
lovely?
luscious and lovely.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, the taste of I can taste the meat in it. Those are his words here. If you just Googled anti-vegan sausage expert, then it seems to be kind of all over. I've seen it shared several times. And then they reveal that they were both vegan, and he gets really angry and mad, and I mean, not that bad, but he's like, "Oh, you tricked me! Like, this is unfair." And then he goes on to bash. And then he goes on to bash both of them. He's like, "Yeah, this one's cardboard, and this one tastes like tissue paper." So this one that he had been saying was luscious and lovely.
I found the Reddit thread now, and the fact that you said luscious and lovely already made me realize this guy's definitely British. And if anybody knows, like, the conservative sausage-loving meat expert from Britain, he looks exactly like you'd think he'd look. And I don't want to, shame anyone's appearance, but it's not surprising. He's got the poppy on, which is a kind of conservative war memorial thing as well, and that's not a surprise. But I almost admire the fact that he was just so stubborn. He didn't like the first one enough that it didn't matter. Like, the second one was going to be the meat one, and he stuck to it.
Yeah, he stuck to it. I don't know. I just I guess this is kind of playing into what we're talking about a little bit about vegan hate sells, I guess. And I don't know, maybe like in the end it makes him look like the buffoon, and it kind of makes the vegan sausage, although the clip that's going around doesn't say what company it was or what sausage it was, but it kind of makes them look good, right? I mean, if they're tricking this vegan expert into thinking that it's real meat. So I think it still plays into pulls on the same strings as these other articles of like, how can we get vegan diet to be clickbaity?
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's the Jeremy Vine show, which, as far as I know, was a radio show, maybe now TV as well. He's quite a mainstream daytime TV radio host, quite unoffensive and likable, and it's quite nice watching. But the fact that the joke has been turned on the meat expert, now he's the butt of the joke rather than the vegans these days. We're coming a long way. Who'd have thought that 10 years ago?
I know. I think that's great. I think that's good. Well, cool. Well, I think we should we have a couple other articles here about lab grown meat, cellular meat. But I think we should probably wrap up here. But I did want to call out a couple comments, and it sounds like a whole lot of people are doing turkey trots, which is awesome.
Nice. I saw a few of them. I'm very impressed with how you guys can both present the show and talk about all you do and keep up with the comments here, because it's multitasking. I guess you get used to it as you go.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit better, I'd say. So I don't know, maybe not.
If anyone misses if you ever miss my comment, or if someone ever misses any of the commenters, don't get it read out. It's harder than it looks. It feels like when you're on a quiz show and they say it's easier sitting at the other side of the TV. And now that I'm on TV, I'm freezing a little bit.
Well, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. So let's see. Path to Ultra said they did a 10K turkey trot during the Canadian Thanksgiving, but tomorrow's just a normal day. Jeffrey says his 5K shirt says "huffing for the stuffing." That's kind of
fun. I like that.
Whole health experience 5K with faster way to fat loss. So we have a lot of people running virtual drumstick dash from Jody Shuck. Bianca's running a turkey trot tomorrow, and didn't plan for mimosas, but likes that idea. We can always count on Bianca to step it up with when there's a cocktail involved, so which I appreciate. So
I think the likes of you and I and Bianca have the nice balance of athletics and enjoyment.
Yeah, that's right. So this will be our last episode for the week. We're gonna take tomorrow and Friday off, but Matt will be back next Monday. I think in the early time period, maybe like 8:15, 8:30 Eastern time. But I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Steven, thank you so much for filling in. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, Plant Based Morning Show, and give us a review on iTunes. So, Steven, thanks. Have a great holiday, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the World Cup games this weekend.
Thank you, guys. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It was a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.